To demonstrate this, we'll be using a tool called the Cisco Packet Tracer. This will allow us to create the infrastructure, which in turn will let us learn how to use the Packet Tracer and see the tools that we'll be needing. Now, as you can see, I have the Packet Tracer already open. On the top, we have the menu bar. We have the File, Edit, Options, View Tools. The one that I'm most interested in, it is the Options selection. So I'm going to go ahead to that point, and I'm going to click Options. And then I want to select Preferences. This is the most important one. If you were to see in the Customize User Experience pane, if you scroll down to where it says Always Show Port Labels, you want to make sure that you put a check mark on there. That way, when you're connecting your devices, you will see your port labels. Now, if you go to the Font tab, which is 3 tabs over, and I'm going to click on that now, the pane that you need to pay attention to, especially me, it's the dialog pane where it says CLI. That is what Cisco calls the cache line interface, all right, or the command line interface, actually is the acronym, what it's called. I need to put the courier or the font size to 16 so I can see. You can customize the Packet Tracer in whatever way you like in order to make it easier for you to configure as far as when you're looking at the different devices and what have you. But you can explore this at your own leisure and see all the different things that you can do. So let's go ahead and close this. And remember, the Interface tab and the Font tab, both those tabs is what you want to look at. So let's go ahead and close that. We want to go ahead and take a look at the blue bar, and we see all the different icons that are there. The icons that you're going to be interested in are the one with the white piece of paper with a little twinkle. That's going to be the new file icon. The next one is going to be just to the right of that. It's your open folder, as we've seen in every application. And our little floppy drive, which we don't use no more, is to click Save. So those 3 buttons are important. If you keep going towards the right in that blue bar, you're going to see 3 icons, and really only the 2 magnifying glasses is what you're interested in. Is the magnifying glass with the plus or the magnifying glass with the minus? What is that going to do is increase the size of your devices in your work area, which is the white area in front of you, or decrease the size. So those are the ones that you'll be working with when you're working on the blue bar. Those are the only icons that you require. Now let's change our view all the way to the right, and we're going to see that there's a sidebar. We have a selector tool, which is the very top one. It's the rectangle, the dotted rectangle. And then we'll have the hand. Don't worry about the hand. You'll never use the hand. The place note. Yes, I'm going to point to it. So I'm going to move my mouse, and I'm going to put it right over that. And it says place note. We are going to be using that because that's how we enter information into the work area. That's how we name our VLANs. That's how we name our routers. That's how we can do many things with the place note, put our IP addresses. Now, the next button just beneath that, and I'm going to point to it, which is the delete button. That is a very dangerous button. If by chance you have an item that's selected already and you accidentally click that button, or you're trying to delete something else, but something else is selected, the moment you click on that, it's going to go ahead and delete whatever item is selected. So be very careful when choosing that. And in this version of the Packet Tracer, if you click, and I'm going to click on it, that X appears, and now your mouse turns into an X. I'm going to get rid of whatever's there. You got to make sure to then reselect, move my mouse back to that select tool. You got to make sure you do that, or that X is always going to be there. Now, towards the bottom of that sidebar, we have 2 envelopes, which are one's a simple PDU, one's a complex PDU, but we'll discuss about those in greater detail later on when we get into actually we design already an infrastructure. Now, if you look at the bottom of the Packet Tracer, and I'm going to move my mouse towards that, okay? And I'm going to point to the very first button there. That's a lightning bolt. Now, that lightning bolt is cheating. That's going to put the connections in there for you. All right? You don't want to go ahead and do that. You want to select your own connections because you want to learn the cable types. Now, I'm going to move my mouse over to the type of connection that you probably will be using most of, which is a copper straight through. And if you notice, once you select or hover over one of the buttons, it's going to tell you, hey, this is a copper straight through. Okay? And then if you hover over the next one, that is a copper crossover. So remember, straight throughs, switch to PC, switch to router. Switch to switch is the copper crossover. PC to PC is the crossover. So keep that in mind. The last cables that you're going to use, if you look at the same bar that we're in, and I'm going to point to it, it is your serial DCE cables. The one that you're mostly going to use is that red cable right there with the clock. When we start actually creating the lab, you're going to see how that cable is going to work. All right, you'll never select the one without the clock. You'll always select the one with the clock. Now we've seen the connection types. Now we're going to look at the actual connections. On the very top, you have the router, the switch, a hub, a wireless device, and that orange lightning bolt. Well, that orange lightning bolt is actually what you need to click on to get to your connection types. If you just wanted to select an actual device or internetworking device from the top, just click on it and then click on the work area, which will, in the next session, we'll go ahead and create that. And at the bottom of this same connection types, if I move my mouse over it, I see my end devices. I'm going to click on it so you can see, get a picture of what they are. And there you see your generic computer, you have a generic laptop, you have different types of devices that we can click on the work area or click and drag into a work area so we can go ahead and use them in the packet tracer. In the new packet tracer, we do have a firewall, which you'll see it in red. Is the only thing in red there. It's pretty cool. It's a Cisco. I'm going to click on it. 5505 firewall. And then the next one over is a cloud. If you want to simulate frame relay, you can go ahead and select one of these clouds and create a frame relay network using this. So this, in its entirety, is the packet tracer. One rule, though, don't forget to save your files. Always save your files. Very important. People forget to do that. So in the next section, we're going to go ahead and actually create the infrastructure that we're going to be using in the lab. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to actually learn an overview of the navigation of the Cisco routers. So within the packet tracer, we're going to select a router, we're going to place it in the work area, and we're going to go ahead and see the different components of the Cisco router. So let's go ahead and select an 1841 series router. So I went ahead and clicked on it, and then boom, there it is, our 1841 Cisco router. So how do we get to it? Well, in the packet tracer, we simply just click on the blue area of the router and it opens up the router. We're going to go ahead and maximize it. So first, I'm going to zoom in so you can see the different slots and different connections that it has. We'll go over that real quick. Now, these are modular routers. And what does that mean? It means that you have actual modules like slot 1 and slot 2. If you look to the left, you'll see a modules sidebar, which you can select different modules to go ahead and put in these modules. And now what we normally put in there is something called a WIC 2T. Now you cannot do this while the router's on, and you can tell the router's on with the green light in the power button. So what you need to do is simple. I'm going to go back over to the power button. So let's make sure you turn off the power button, meaning turning off the router. And I'm going to select in the modules area, the WIC 2T, and I'm going to drag it, click and hold and drag into a slot, and boom, it's right in there. And then turn the router back on. Simple. The other connection types, you see you have a fast Ethernet 0, you have a fast Ethernet 01, and if my eyes are not playing around with me, I said it correctly, you have a console port and an auxiliary port. Now that's just the physical connections of the router. If you select in the tab area, the CLI, now we're in the router. Now we get to see everything. And when you first turn on a Cisco router, it's going to tell you, hey, do you want to enter the configuration dialog, which this is called setup mode? And you're always going to say no because you're going to do things from scratch. We don't want to run a little wizard that's going to tell us, hey, what is the name? Hey, what is your IP address? You don't want that. So we're going to go ahead and hit N. Or if you like to type out the word no, that's okay. And you hit enter. Now in the packet tracer, you would hit enter again. And that will take you to when you see the greater than symbol. That means you're in user mode. If you want to know what to type there, it's very simple. You would type a question mark. And you would see that you'll have all those commands available to you. In user mode, There's not much you can do. User mode is very passive. You can ping, you can log out, you can do a tracer, but that's about it. If you want to have a little bit more privileges, you want to go to privilege mode, which you will type config T. And, oh, I'm sorry, got ahead of myself. You'll go enable, and enable will take you to privilege mode. There, if I type a question mark, you can see you have a lot more commands. You see the word more at the bottom? If I hit the space bar, it puts in more commands. So very careful when working in privilege mode. The word says it itself. You have privileges. You can actually delete the iOS. You can erase the start. You have to be very careful when working on here, but you still really can configure. When you want to configure the router, you want to go to something called global configuration mode. At that point, you type config T, and now you're in global configuration mode. Now you can go ahead and create a host name, R1, no spaces. And from there, you can go to interface, right? Interface, F00. And now you're in interface configuration. One thing you need to pay attention to the prompt. As you start moving along the packet tracer, navigating the packet tracer, you're going to see that the prompt is going to change. Very important to know when you're typing a command what prompt you're in. If you want to back up one spot, exit, takes you back one. Let's say we wanted to configure that console port that we saw when we're looking at the physical connection. That will be a line. Line, con for short. You can type console, that's fine. And it will be 0 because there's only one, and we usually start at 0. Hit enter. And there you would see config line. So navigating through the packet tracer is really not difficult. All you gotta do is just pay attention to what part of the configuration you're in. What prompt are you in? What is it that you're going to type? But it's very easy to go back and forth. So if you type exit from line config, it will take you back to global configuration. And if you type exit one more time, it will take you back to privilege mode. If you hit enter, now you're in privilege mode. Once you're in privilege mode, you can do the copy, run, start, hit enter, and it's going to ask you, hey, do you want to copy this configuration to the startup config file? And the default answer is startup config. So you just hit enter again, and it will actually copy it to that particular file. So these are the things that when you're configuring a router or navigating through the router, this is what you need to pay attention to. Where are you on the router? Are you in global configuration? Are you in interface configuration? Are you in line configuration? So all these things is because when you take a test, or even in the real world scenario where you're configuring and you're typing a command and you know it's right, and all of a sudden it's giving you an error. And you go, that can't be, this is the correct command. Take a look at the prompt you're in. Because 99% of the time is that you're in the wrong prompt. Now, in the next session, when we start building our infrastructure, we're going to go ahead and just start putting our devices out, and we're going to begin configuring our routers and putting in the IP scheme that we need. I'll see you then. All right, blank packet tracer, no routers. We're going to set up our network lab from scratch. So we're going to go ahead and select our routers first. So I'm going to use an 1841 router. I'm going to click and drag it out. But you saw that little jump? It's because we're kind of zoomed in. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so it doesn't jump routers all over the place. I'm going to go ahead and select another router. You see how it does that little jump? Yeah, packet trace is a little crazy, but that's okay. We got our routers, and we'll be renaming our routers. We're going to select now the switch in our connections area. All right, we're going to use a 2960 switch. Click and drag. We'll put them right underneath, and we'll readjust after it's out there. You see how it's jumping them around? So we got to make sure that it doesn't fly off the screen from us, because it will do that. And then let's move this up, and then we'll select from our connection types 3 PCs. Very simple. As a matter of fact, we'll select 2 PCs, and we're going to select 1 server. And what is the server going to be? You will see. It will be to back up our configurations. Okay, so we have there, let's zoom in as best as possible. Okay, here we go. We're kind of zoomed in all the way there. And we're going to now select the connection types. Now, no cheating. We select our lightning bolt to access our connection types. We're going to click our straight through cable, PC1, switch 1. We pick port 1. Switch 1, port 24, F00. There's a method to the madness. There's a reason why I'm using these particular ports, and you will find that out later. I'm going to go ahead and click on the connection type again. So we duplicate what we just did on the first switch on all the switches. Not very difficult at all. And we keep just connecting them. Remember, from switch to router, port 24. And that's the reason why I had you select in the Preferences tab that you want to see what ports you're connecting to, so you can actually visually see them. And then on the server, same thing. And then we pick port 1. And then once again, we go back to our little connection type. So I like to call the store to get my cables. And then port 24 and to F00. So now we've connected our devices, but how are we in the world going to connect our routers in between? Well, we're going to use those modules. We're going to use that red serial cable. So we're going to go ahead and point to the very first router. And we're going to go in, well, we're in really. I'll maximize that. Within the, I'll zoom in so you can see it. With it, turn off the router. And in the modules area, I'm going to select WIC2T. WIC2T. Click and hold, drag over, and drop it on slot 0. And then turn it on. And we're going to repeat this process on the other router. So I'm just going to minimize it. Open up the other router. Maximize it. I'm going to zoom in so you can see exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to turn it off. Take WIC2T from the modules area, drag it over to slot 0, boom, drop it in there, turn it on, minimize the router, same thing in the last router. Same exact thing. Zoom in, turn off the router, WIC2T, drag it in there, and then turn it back on. So now, how do we connect these routers now that we have these modules in there? Now we get that serial DCE at the bottom in your connection types, the one with the clock. We click on it. Now you see we have a different type of mouse here, right? We click on the first router, and it says, where do you want to click to? Serial 000. Now, the reason I do that is for purposes of lab purposes. That's it. There's really no, you can select whichever one. Visualization purposes, it's just nice to see 0101. That's the only reason. All right, and then I'm going to click the same cable again with the clock, and then click on that, serial 0, and then serial 1. Now we have our actual network, but we yet don't know our IP addresses. What IP addresses are we going to use in this network? So that's where we're going to get the place note, which is on the right sidebar. I'm going to click on the place note, and I'm going to go select anywhere really, and then I'm going to choose the IP address scheme for the serials, 10.1.1.4/30. I'll get my selector tool to close that and click and drag it over. All right, now you can, since it's red, I can do a Control-C to copy. It's kind of high, so it may not want to do that. So let's move this a little bit towards the top, because usually what happens is it brings it up to the top. Sure indeed, there it is. So I'm going to bring it over. Put an 8 there because we're incrementing by 4. All right, so let's move down. And now for the LAN, we're going to get a new place note. And did it get it? No, they didn't get it. Does it want to get it? There it is. 192.168.1.0. We'll make a simple one, 24. And again, the reason that we're doing this is for visualization between the serial and the LAN. And then we're going to Control-C, which is copy. Control-V, as in Victor, which is paste. Drag it over. Click on it. Change it to 2. Right? And then paste again. Control-V. Because since it's in memory, it remembers the last thing it copied. And then we click on it while it's selected. And click on the number we want to change because it's the third octet, 3. So now we have our network lab ready to go, and we can go ahead and start our configurations of the routers.